first. So, okay, so there's one thing. It's one, two, in the middle. I know what you're talking about. And it's on the water every time you and I didn't feel like that much progress. Yeah. We didn't, at the end of the meeting, there was no, here's on the path forward, here's on the forward, or no conditions on it. Those of you who are liking this, are fine. The fact that other people enter certificates, or the fact that they are looking for certificates that don't like it. I don't know if those telecom has a lot of resources that they serve. I don't know if it's also. Right. Was there any comment?
Okay, we're going to get started in about 3 minutes. Give people a little bit of a chance to come. This is the tools for creating internet drafts tutorial.
It's the same.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and maybe a few more people will filter in. This tutorial is called Tools for Creating Internet Drafts. My name is Alice Russo. I work for the RFC Production Center, which is part of the RFC editor. So of all the internet drafts that are posted, a small portion of them are approved for publication as an RFC, and those are the documents that I see. But I have a general interest in getting internet drafts being easier to post, making a new author's job easier so that they can focus on the content instead of frustration with the tool. And I've been coming to the ITF meetings for about 8 years and talking with new people, and so have some ideas of those frustrations, and that's why I'm giving this tutorial. Feel free to stop me at any point along the way. Just let me know that you have a question. Also, we'll do questions at the end. Just to see a show of hands to start, who's made an internet draft using XML to RFC successfully? Okay, who's made an internet draft using nroff edit successfully? Okay, so we had about half the people for XML to RFC and only 2 people for nroff edit. And now how about other, whether that's the Word template or editing the text directly or pandoc to RFC or links to RFC or any other flavor? Okay, 2, so about the same as nroff edit for the other category. This tutorial primarily will focus on XML to RFC and nroff edit as good options. They're stable and they're somewhat straightforward depending on your perspective. We'll also get into a brief overview. So I'm just going to go to the next slide. A brief intro to links to RFC, and as I said, questions at the end. I will get into some of the nitty-gritty with XML to RFC and nroff edit, and show you what the tools look like. But for the real nitty-gritty for any of the tools, you have to go to the documentation that the tool authors have created. And as you know in the ITF, there's not only volunteers who come and participate in the ITF to make internet protocols, etc., there are also volunteers who make tools. And that's where all of these tools originated. So at the start of the document lifecycle, this is a slide from Scott Bradner's Newcomers tutorial, which is running at the same time as this tutorial. I recommend you look at the slides if you're new. For an ITF submission, it theoretically goes through all of this. It follows the green arrow, and a small portion of those documents become RFCs. I'm interested in the star, the very beginning. So I'm trying to make this as general as possible. If you have questions about the final part, what the RFC editor does, the RFC editor is here this week at a desk near the IANA desk, and you can come by and ask questions. I will touch a little bit on that, but that's not really the focus of this tutorial. Okay, so looking at some of the options. So this table is meant to be an overview. As I said, for the details, it's important to go look at the actual documentation for the tool. So nroff edit, you edit a source file that's nroff. And it's an application, standalone application, and you edit within the application, and it shows you the nroff file on one side and the text file on the other side. It has a template for internet draft already inside of it, which is nice to get started. By easy reference creation, I mean, can you type in an RFC number and it automatically pulls the information like the authors, the title, and the date, and puts it into your document? And it does have that for RFCs only. Automatic talk. Talk is for table of contents. So that means if you label things as section headings, does it automatically pull those out and make a table of contents? Yes, this tool does that. As I said, you edit within the application. And we'll take a much closer look at this one. The next one, XML to RFC. I'm guessing you've at least heard of it. This one, the source file is XML. And it lives at this website, xml.resource.org. You can run it from the website, or you can download it and install it. There is, with version 2, there's a GUI. You can also run it on the command line. There is a template. There are lots of templates, actually. Multiple templates available for XML files, depending, like if you're writing an internet draft that includes a MIB, management information base, then you can get a special template. But there's a basic template as well. As far as easy reference creation, this one for RFCs and internet drafts, and also for various standards organizations, you can type in the number, and you might have to go look at the actual citation library to see what it's named, but you type in the name and an identifier for this reference and it pulls the information into your document. Automatic table of contents, yes. And in brief, you edit the XML file in your editor, whatever editor you like, then you run the converter. The V2 GUI is a lightweight editor, so you can actually edit inside of it, and I'll show you what that looks like. The Word template is for those people who like Microsoft Word. You basically start with a template file. RFC 5385 explains how everything works. You create a .doc with specific configuration, and then you save it as text. Then you run that text through a Perl script, and it spits out text that's an internet draft, the right format to upload your internet draft. I'm just going to close the door here. Thanks. It also creates your table of contents automatically. Not as easy for the reference creation. You have to copy and paste, put in all the text needed. So more options. Links to RFC lets you edit in links, specially configured. Then you run a converter. You can run the converter from the web page, links.rfc.org, excuse me, or you can download it and install it. It's basically running various transforms and then running XML to RFC as the last step. So you will have an XML file. And what's the advantage of having an XML file? The advantage of having an XML file is when you submit your internet draft to the ID submission tool, it gives you the option to upload a text file. That's the required one, is the .text. Then you could also submit an XML file. And that's useful in the sense that other people might want to use that XML file as a starting point. Maybe your co-author wants to exchange the XML file if they're not also using links to RFC. Also the RFC editor, if your document made it to publication of an RFC, we edit XML files. And because it relies on XML to RFC, you get that same easy reference creation for RFCs, internet drafts, and other standards organizations documents. CanDoc to RFC is for people who like wiki markup, like wiki style markdown, as you might call it. It's documented on the website. It's also an internet draft. You basically edit the .mkd and the .xml in your editor, then you run the converter. And it also runs XML to RFC as the last step, so you also get the advantage of there is an XML file, and you use the reference creation that XML to RFC provides. And finally, there are other ways, right? People make their own hacks, or people edit text files directly. Yes?
I just use raw nroff.
Exactly. Donald uses raw nroff as well as the RFC editor, actually. So you
Why did Mac OS X?
Yes, you can run nroff on the command line, and it will do basically what. So nroff edit is taking an nroff file and spitting out a text file. There's just a command line program from the late 70s or early 80s that does the same thing. So, and that's totally functional. So you have other options. My advice would be to use IDNITs. So especially if you're just editing a text file by hand, you want to run it through IDNITs with the submission criteria selected, so that then you will know that you have an internet draft that you can upload to the ID submission tool without a problem. Any questions on these options before I dive into more detail on nroff edit? Oh, actually, quick note about future options, future developments. So the RFC format has been under discussion for a long time. As I mentioned, the RFC editor is the organization that edits internet drafts that have been approved for publication as an RFC, which is only a fraction of internet drafts that are created. So this discussion about why do we use plain text, why are we stuck in the past, and can we move forward? So there's been a lot of effort in the direction of moving forward to catch up with what's going on with that. I would suggest reading RFC 6949 and an announcement from the RFC series editor, Heather Flanagan, that's about the future direction for that, and also this format FAQ about where things might head in the future. But none of this applies currently. Okay, what's nroff edit? It's a WYSIWYG editor for writing and editing internet drafts. As I mentioned, it's a side-by-side view of the nroff source and the text output. It's available for download. It includes various features such as spell check and a template when starting an internet draft. Taking a closer look, or rationale for using it, it's straightforward. It creates an internet draft in the proper format, has a preloaded template as mentioned, auto-generated table of contents, creates references for RFCs, and you'll have a source file that the RFC editor can edit should your ID make it to that step. We do edit nroff files as well. So to get started quickly with nroff edit, I would recommend downloading and installing the tool, selecting file new draft from template, and use the automatic reference list creation. And it actually pulls its information from a file, plain text file that the RFC editor makes available, which no matter what tool or non-tool, if you're just editing text that you're using to create an internet draft, this file might be useful to you because it's every RFC listed in the format that goes into the references section. Now clearly for an internet draft, it doesn't really matter if you have the perfect RFC editor format, but here's an easy place to copy and paste the information from. So the way that nroff edit works is you just type in an RFC number and it pulls the right one from that file and inserts it. And I'll show you how that looks later. So the preloaded template, you can also just download it, like if you were going to go with the option that Donald mentioned, where you're going to just use nroff on the command line. There's a .nroff file, that's their template that's within nroff edit. Then we also have a template on our RFC editor website. I would recommend the top one from them. nroff is a simplistic way of giving directives to make the text output. So you basically put these all your commands start with a period, and you tell it how much to indent before each thing. You tell it whether the text should be flowing or if the text should not be flowing, like for a figure. You manually insert page breaks. If you want to force a line break, you can do that with .br. So it's pretty tactile, right? Like you're controlling everything with the nroff commands. Exactly how the white space appears, etc. So this information, as well as more, is inside of nroff edit. There's a help supported features, and it tells you about the nroff commands. Also, if you type in nroff commands on Google, like I said, it's a tool that's 30 years old, so you can get plenty of information about what the available nroff commands are. Not 30?
I was going to say, I'm not sure nroff really exists. It's all groff with certain parameters and stuff, but whatever.
nroff, groff, these
like
troff, these are related forms of this type of text formatting. So as mentioned, you can say paste new managed table of contents, and then it automatically creates that pretty table of contents by pulling the section headers from the body of the document that you've labeled with .ti0. Why is that nice? So that you don't have to make it yourself and then try to guess what page it's on. Or look at your text output and do it. Similarly for inserting references, that you can say paste new managed reference list from the edit menu, and you can enter RFC numbers and optional labels. So the label function is pretty nice because sometimes you want to just call the reference IPv2. You don't want to call it RFC 5996. And I'm going like this with my hands because square brackets is usually in internet drafts and RFCs what the how you know that it's a citation. So this syntax, the 5996 semicolon IPv2, then you're going to get IPv2 in square brackets in text, which can be nice depending if that's what you want in your document. You can also just do it with the RFC number. And for internet drafts and other documents, you copy and paste a reference entry from another ID, or you type it from scratch, and you enter .ti3 before each entry, which means temporary indent 3 spaces, and it just makes things work nicely in your nroff. That's an nroff command. So here's a screenshot of the managed reference list. It's grayed out. So this is what the nroff would look like. It's grayed out because it's a comment. All the comments in nroff start with that sequence, period, backslash, quotation marks, and then you can see it actually shows you beneath it what it's outputting. So like he has 2119 semicolon keywords, and it outputs keywords and then the reference for RFC 2119. Which is where must, may, should, etc. are defined, the all caps one. So let's say you have an existing internet draft that you're tired of editing in text by hand, or you don't know who has the XML file. There is the ability to convert an existing draft from text to nroff inside of nroff edit. You would do that conversion, which is not 100%. It does its best. The internet draft to start with, the text that you're starting with has to be decently formatted in order for it to turn it into nroff. And it'll tell you not a valid ID if it's not. But this can be a nice way to start. If assuming the conversion works, then you update the dates in the author list. You can invoke the managed table of contents, invoke the managed reference list. There's even the ability to integrate with IETF tools diff and a few changes made since the previous draft, and publish URL to the diff for wider review. That's kind of what I would call bells and whistles, the super bells and whistles. You don't really need the last 2 items there, aren't necessary if you update the internet draft and then post it using the ID submission tool. Your internet draft will be available and the diffs will automatically already be available. So this is kind of like homegrown if you wanted to post a diff before you put the internet draft into the internet draft repository using the ID submission tool. This is showing what I say in the bells and whistles, that you can configure it to make a temporary diff file, and it's using RFC diff tool to make this side-by-side diff. You don't have to use nroff edit in order to get a pretty diff file like this. This tool is available from the tool site, and also it's integrated into the HTML versions of internet drafts. At the top, there are 2 diff links, diff 1 and diff 2, you might have noticed. And one of those shows the side-by-side diff between the version of the internet draft and the previous one. And the other diff is the HTML diff, which is like the red and green changes. So you don't have to make this yourself. It will automatically be made if you upload your draft to using the internet draft submission tool. As far as nroff edit, there's lots more functionality. There is spell check and then expiration calculator, meaning if you create your draft on January 1st, then it automatically puts expires June or July 1st, right? 6 months later. Page view, which lets you page through your text output, selectable fonts, so you can make, it's WYSIWYG, right? Like you can actually make what you see is what you get. You can also make it look nicer, like, oh, I want it to be a bigger font. Styled output and warning if lines exceed 72 characters. So you may be aware that there's a line limit of 72 characters from the RFC editor, but that also gets used it's encouraged for internet drafts as well. So the tool would warn you about that. And then it also checks for updates. So if the application itself needs to update, if the template needs to be updated, and also the RFC citation library. So keep in mind that RFCs are continuously being published. So if you're trying to have a citation library of all RFCs, you have to get to new ones, right? So the way XML to RFC works, the directory just continually adds them as RFCs are published. But the way nroff edit works is you have to tell it, like, go get the updated information. If you're trying to cite a recent RFC and it's not working, then you might want to just tell it, go get the update. Another note on this, if you use Linux and you're having trouble installing nroff edit, you should send mail to Tools Discuss or from the nroff edit documentation. It works fine on Linux, but it has been a reported issue with installation. And there is more information on that site. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what nroff edit actually looks like. So this is new draft from template, as I mentioned. So the left side is what the nroff looks like. Right side is the text, and due to the way the screen is, it's hard to make it show it correctly on here, but it is actually formatted correctly. And it updates it as you go, so you can make changes in here and then see them there. You can also turn that off so that anyway, it's got some bells and whistles. It also has comments in here to tell you some things, so you can see this grayed out text is giving you some information. It's similar with the XML templates that are available. The authors of the templates have put comments in to provide direction. This is where the managed table of contents is, so how it's showing up orange is telling you it's automatically created text. And the way that was inserted is paste new managed table of contents, and paste new managed reference list is the one that we'll see further down. So this is basically just an empty template, right? Like you would type in your information. You don't have to cite RFC 2119. You should only use that if you know that you're using those requirement keywords. There are some characters that need to be escaped and special characters, so it's giving you a lesson about that here within the template, but in general, you don't have to worry too much about getting in that type of specialized nroff, because things will just do the right thing. Here's the managed reference list. So again, the automatically generated text is showing up in orange. And all the author has typed in is this, like 2119 keywords, and then a list of numbers, right? And then it outputs the actual citations. And in the text, you don't see any of the comments, right? You just see what you told it to put. The .ti3 that I mentioned is this indent of 3 spaces. and then this indent is bigger, and that's the .in. So you're telling it indent, let's see what it is exactly on here, indent 14, and then for each of these, pull it out to 3 spaces. So each of the ones beneath it say TI3, TI3, TI3. That's the primary trick with using nroff. That's good to be familiar with because that's how you format your references section as well as your lists. And yeah. That's pretty much it. I'll show you what it looks like if we change this. So I just changed it in nroff, and then it just changes it in the text. And you can save, you can save it, and when you save, it's going to save the .nroff file as well as the .text. Any questions before I close out of the, oh, I know what it's going to demo, the other direction. All right, let's open an internet draft and convert it to nroff. So this is saying right now not a valid nroff ID because it thinks this is nroff because it's on the left side. I haven't told it to try to convert it yet. So under tools, convert text to nroff. Now on the left side is the nroff, and on the right side is the text file that I just opened. So now I could mess with it, right? Like update this, edit the document, and the new text file is going to be on the right side. The way that it did that conversion is just flat, right? So it's not a managed table of contents, it's just as it appears here. So if you wanted to use their, let's say you're doing extensive edits to this document, you probably want to switch to the managed table of contents. So you would cut this, and you would do the managed table of contents, and it would look exactly this, almost exactly the same. So I just cut it, and I'm gonna say paste new managed table of contents, and it just automatically pulled everything that was labeled with .ti0. So that would be like indent 0, temporary indent 0. That's what's for every single heading, and it makes a table of contents for you. Okay, closing out of this one.
Question.
Yes.
Sorry. Is this smart enough to deal with nibs and actually generated that artwork section?
So for nib, so the question was about nib that I mentioned earlier, managed information base, which some internet drafts and RFCs have inside of them. For a nib, a .nf command would go around the whole nib, and that's how we recommend, like, if I were nroffing a document from scratch myself, I would put a .nf around the whole nib. I would not try to use the wrapping functionality of nroff to get pretty line wrapping. So yes, this tool would handle nib in the sense that you would just put .nf, which means no fill, but it really means no wrapping. So before every figure, you have to have a .nf. And this tool, this was the conversion, right, from text to nroff. It was smart enough to put a .nf here because it could tell this was a figure coming, and then it turns it back on. .fi is like start wrapping the text again when you get back to a paragraph, and then .nf again before figure. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. Okay. So his question is basically about if you have a long block of code within your internet draft, does this tool work? And the answer is yes, assuming you've paid some attention to how your line wrapping works inside of your code, because you would just put .nf and treat it as a big figure where the lines would not automatically be wrapped. Okay, going back to the slides. Okay. Moving on to XML RFC. So it's a tool that converts an XML source file into text or HTML, nroff, unpaginated text, expanded XML file, PDF, even there. It creates it in the right format, right? Again, the whole purpose of this tutorial is to introduce you to some tools that might make your life easier for getting an internet draft in the right format. It's available from xml.resource.org as the online converter, or you can download it. Why would you use it? As mentioned, also it inserts the boilerplate text, meaning like the status of this memo that goes at the top of the internet draft, and copyright notice. It formats the reference entries. So with nroff edit, I was showing you, you really kind of get into the nitty gritty with each reference entry. You're saying .ti3, indented, do this. XML.rfc, basically anything that's marked as a reference, it spits it out in a nice format. Another advantage to using XML.rfc is if you're really interested in having HTML or PDF, this isn't one route. And you'll have a source file that you can use to exchange comments with co-authors, or you can extract metadata from it, right? Because everything inside of the XML file is labeled. You could theoretically say, okay, I have 10 XML files in this directory. I want to know what working groups they came from, and the working group element from the XML file. You can pull it out, assuming it had been set. Also, the RFC editor can edit it. On the point about exchanging comments with co-authors, you could also exchange comments with co-authors in an nroff file using comments. They might not be as easily extracted unless you wrote a script to extract comments from nroff files, but yeah, any source file you could exchange comments with. So I mentioned there's XML to RFC v2. The tool has been rewritten from scratch. It was originally written in Tcl by Marshall Rose a long time ago. It's been rewritten in Python, and there is a GUI now. And it's also still the web converter at that page in the command line version. It is stricter than v1, meaning it's enforcing the DTD. So this means it might complain to you if a list is not inside of a T tag. And there is things that might not seem so important to actually getting the text output. And this can be one of the hurdles to getting your internet draft ready to go. I would just encourage you to ask questions, but there's also, if you're running XML.rc v2 from the command line, you can turn it off, like you can tell it to ignore the DTD with a no DTD option. One way to avoid those issues is to start with a template. So if you're starting with an XML file that runs with v2, then there's a good chance if you don't accidentally delete tags that that you're going to end up with an XML file that runs. Okay. There is a mailing list that's pretty active. People send questions. Hey, I can't get this XML file to work, and people write back and say, oh, you need to do this, or yeah, that's a bug if that's the case. V2, there is a tracker for bugs that are in V2. I'd encourage you to send your question first to the list before actually deciding that it's a bug. So you have choices when you use XML.rfc. Are you going to use it on the web or install it locally? Are you going to use the citation libraries that are available online, or do you want to have your own copy of the citation library? So you can edit your favorite editor. You can use a fancy XML editor like XMLmind. I understand the license for the personal edition is no longer free for XMLmind, but I also have heard that it's a very useful tool, so you might want to look into it. Editor. I've barely used XMLmind. I edit Emacs. And if you do use XMLmind, there's an add-on. Not exactly WYSIWYG, but what you see is kind of neat. That I'm happy to provide the URL for that if you're interested. Also, I think it's available from the tools.ietf.org page. So let's say you just want to get started and get that internet draft done as soon as possible. I'd recommend you use the tool online and use the citation libraries that are online, that you use your favorite text editor and you edit the raw XML, and that you start with a template. So a template could be the XML file of an old another internet draft, or it could be one of the empty templates that are available. They're all available on this page. I recommend starting with draft Davies template bare.xml. Bare meaning some of the commentary in there, like all the comments that are instructive, have been kind of minimized, so there's not as much talking to within the template. For a draft containing a nib, there's also a specific template for that. There are other options for creating an XML file. So this is like make your own template or make your own XML file. So the IG creation wizard lets you